But let's turn now to ASIO Director General Mike Burgess's warning about the grave threats to our national security. Now, as you would have seen on the show last night, Burgess spoke about an extremist Islamist organisation operating in Australia who don't share our values and who want an Islamic caliphate. The ASIO boss said Hizb ut-Tahrir are religiously motivated. Their behaviour is provocative, their rhetoric offensive, and their insidious strategy is similar to neo-Nazi tactics. But some of Burgess's strongest comments last night came in the Q&A session after his speech.
If I can pick on Hizb ut-Tahrir again, we have to look actually at its core, what that group internationally believes in. It doesn't believe in the open three society we live in. It wants to replace this with a caliphate. How can we accept that? This is our country. They can do that in their own location. They certainly shouldn't want to do that here.
How can we accept that? They should do that in their own location. That's what Mike Burgess says. So he's almost saying there that Hizb ut-Tahrir shouldn't be in Australia. And he also says, as you'll hear now, that it's not right that we let them continue to operate. Have a look.
Of course, others would argue people of certain beliefs are allowed to do that, which could change the country. Sure. However, the majority set the will of the country and the values of the country. Something's not quite right when we let this continue, because I really worry about that gives off the vibe that drives inappropriate, violent and threatening behaviours into our society, and that should concern every single decent person in this country.
So Burgess said there, something is not quite right when we let this continue. I mean, that's a fairly direct call for action. Burgess made the point that Hizb ut-Tahrir stretched the boundaries of legality without breaking them. But he's extremely concerned about this movement in Australia. Now, Hizb ut-Tahrir is listed as a terrorist organisation in the UK, in Germany, in Indonesia and many other countries. Yet the Albanese government has refused to prescribe them. The coalition today said it is time to start the process of listing Hizb ut-Tahrir as a terrorist organisation. Shadow Home Affairs Minister John O'Donoghue said this.
This government need to act when it comes to protecting our nation and taking seriously the concerns of senior officials in the intelligence and law enforcement space, whether it is doing the work that is required to be done when it comes to groups like Hizb ut-Tahrir. What actions has this government taken to address this risk? The minister should tell us and should put people's minds at ease. It is about national security, it is about protecting our country.
Now, this is a movement that we've seen very publicly over the past 2 years. Hizb ut-Tahrir celebrated the October 7 attacks and organised gatherings in Australia, saying it was a day of pride. They took part in the University of Sydney encampments and were involved in many pro-Palestinian protests. It's absurd to think that Sydney University even capitulated to some of the demands of this organisation when they agreed to shut down the encampments. And Julian Leeser at the time spoke about this in Parliament.
At a time when the AUKUS agreements require the focus and attention of our best and brightest minds, Sydney University is allowing an extremist group, an organisation listed as a terrorist organisation by our oldest ally, to run the ruler over every defence agreement.
But most dangerously, there's a concern that they're involved in the recruitment and radicalisation of young Muslims. They're even about to hold their national conference in Bankstown next week. Now, there are challenges with listing this group because, according to the current threshold, an organisation has to be involved in planning, preparing or advocating terror. And advocacy doesn't mean rhetoric, it is a high-level threshold. But the legislation can be changed. If there's a will, there's a way, and that's the issue. There is no will from the Albanese government. There are also a variety of other steps the government could take to curtail their dangerous reach. Tony Burke could cancel the visas of any members who are here on visas. The government could use AUSTRAC to investigate their charities and tax status. The government could disrupt their activities and prosecute them. The AFP could for hate speech under federal legislation. But none of this seems to be happening. Perhaps this is why Mike Burgess sounded frustrated last night. Listen to just those key lines again.
How can we accept that? This is our country. They can do that in their own location. They certainly shouldn't want to do that here. Something's not quite right when we let this continue.
Yeah, I think we'd all agree something is not quite right, that Hizb ut-Tahrir is allowed to operate unchecked in Australia, radicalising young minds and destroying social cohesion. When you have the Director General of ASIO publicly demanding action, then you know it's a serious situation. It's time the authorities and law enforcement act to stop the influence of this insidious group, considered a terrorist organisation in many parts of the world.